there, and welcome to Sweet Child of Time. I'm your host, Steve Barnes. We're talking about episode 7 of Dark today. We're doing this episode Crossroads. I'm here with Lindsey Dunn from One of My Stories. Ahoy there, Lindsey.
Ahoy, Steve.
Ahoy.
Rocky waters ahead.
Yeah, that's right. And we got our captain, and we got a lot of our captain this episode, too. A lot of Mr. Ike Larson there.
Well, I don't know if it's a lot, but it's more than we've seen in a while. I was like, yep, he pops up.
Yeah, we get a good close-up of him, and he talks for a long time, so we get a good look at his face. And it's, you know, I'll just start out saying with this, that I think it's interesting, like how shabby he's looking here as the stranger. You know, obviously, he's disheveled, and he has a crazy look about his eyes. I remember, like, me and Nate, like two like heterosexual men, like talking about how attractive Ike Larson was and how strikingly handsome and what, like, you know, perfect male kind of situation. And so it's really funny going back and seeing him as this stranger dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, isn't the last time we saw him on Dark, he took his suitcase and went into the cave. Right?
That's correct. Yes.
You know, so that you mentioning he looks more shaggy here, unkempt, it makes it mysterious, because we're like, well, where did he go?
Right.
That he got that darn dirty, you know.
Correct. And we know it wasn't the Prometheus. We know we're stuck here in the dark world. Mm-hmm. Let's see, I wanted to back up a little bit. I think you did too. We wanted to retouch on last episode. We had Regina tied to the tree there. And, right. Okay, Regina, daughter of Claudia. They're Tiedemans, correct?
The Tiedemann family, yes.
Tiedemans, okay, right. So, I mentioned in the last podcast, I said it was like it reminded me of a Greek myth where we had a person, a goddess, Andromeda, chained to a tree. I was wrong about that. She was chained to like the rocky shores, and she wasn't chained there so the tide could come in and sweep her away, which is what I thought. I got the myth kind of wrong, but you kind of encouraged me and told me I was, might be onto something here, where she was actually tied to the shores to be fed to a monster. The monster is named Cetus. It's Cetus. C-U-T-U-S. And that's the reason that her parents, did that, was to appease her, sacrifice her. And instead of letting that happen, Perseus, the Greek god, rushed in to save her, took her off, rescued her from where she was chained up, getting ready to get sacrificed to the monster. And she became a queen later on, and I can't remember the name of the kingdom, and I didn't write it down, unfortunately. But she was a queen, and it made me think about Regina. And you mentioned an interesting fact, too, that her name means queen, right?
Right. Regina means queen. And we talked about in the chat, we were thinking, well, she is kind of the queen. Regina is the queen of Winden, because she is the daughter of Claudia, who ran the power plant, and she's now the wife of Alexander, who now runs the power plant.
Right, and they run the town. Yeah. So it's like she's the queen no matter how you look at it, whether she's Alexander's queen or whether she's the queen regent, from Claudia getting handed down. I'm not sure how. I guess we'll find out later how Alexander got the power plant and how she didn't, Regina herself. But yeah, I really, it strongly reminded me of that myth. And the more I looked into it, the more parallels I was seeing. And I think we might be onto something there.
Yeah, and in fact, I believe in a couple episodes we do get to find out more about Regina. Obviously, we won't spoil those here, but some of the things you've mentioned in the story, I'm kind of like, oh, that ties even better. Oh, now, it would have been great if the myth was like the girl tied to the tree instead of the rocks. But I feel like the heart and soul is still there, because I kept looking up myth, girl tied to tree, and I did come up with there was the myths that keep coming up, a different myth about a tree, but it was a slightly different story, and the one that you mentioned about Andromeda seems to fit our narrative a little bit better.
We got a bingo. Very good. Well, yeah, that's what I had to go on this week. That's the only backup I had to do. Did you have any news for us this week or anything going on?
Not in the world of Wyndon, no. Mm-mm.
Okay, yep. We're going to stick to the world of Wyndon, of course. And, yeah, we got episode 7 here, Crossroads. Yeah, I'll let you take the recap if you're ready to roll into this.
I sure am. This episode starts with a bang as far as I'm concerned because we have a brand new character just show up on the screen that we've never seen before.
Yes.
A little boy dressed primly in shorts and a sweater and a blazer. He reminds me a lot of one of those kids in the family Von Trapp from Sound of Music.
You're absolutely right. Little adorable boy. I think he was going to break into song, but he didn't.
And his face, this whole entire side of his face is bloody, and it was interesting because if I was a little kid, his size, I mean, I don't know that we know how old he is based on just this image alone, but it looks like whatever happened must have been pretty painful. But yet he's sort of waking up, and he's not like, ow, 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 or like, I'm hurt.
Right.
He's just more amazed that he's in this space, in this room.
Not unusual to get like a head injury like that and not actually feel the pain, because I was a recipient of such. I was skateboarding and I like hit my head really hard, smacked it on concrete, but it was super smooth concrete. And it hit it so hard it split my skin open and did not bleed. But it did not have any pain either. Like, I didn't have the pain until later when I had like really bad headaches for the next few days. But at the time, it wasn't much pain. It was just more of like an inconvenience. Like, oh my God, I got to get stitches now. But I think he might be in the same boat too. Maybe he was hit just right, because it looked like he was hit with something. It's really hard to look at him with all that blood. I know it's fake blood, but you know, I get disgustos looking at stuff like that, and I was getting squeamish looking at the poor guy.
Yeah, and the image actually, I'm looking at it right here on the recap. It almost looks like some of the blood is blackened and dried. Yes, so
I noticed that too.
There could have possibly been a delay between when he got this injury and he's waking up in the room.
Yeah.
But
he's
there
waking
is
up
still
for the first time.
Yeah, there's still some redness to it. So, but yes, of course, we're wondering, well, what happened to this kid? He's also waking up in the torture room that we've established as a scary place.
We've had nightmares about it. Yes, we know.
And the room looks very lived in. Was another thing I noticed, is that the stuffed animals, we've seen this room before, and it looked pretty, I don't know, almost like designer catalog, how neat and tidy it was.
Right.
And now here's the stuffed animals are kind of askew. The bed is unmade, and there's a tray of food. But yet it looks like this kid has just arrived in the room.
Yeah.
So is it possible that, you know, the last person we saw in this room was Eric? We know Eric is now, as long as this continuous, or, you know, in chronological order, Eric was here and now he's not. So has the room been cleaned up since Eric, or is this still...
Right.
Yeah.
It looks pretty obvious who this kid is, too, and we learn in this episode, and matching from, like, the facial scars that we can plainly see on Helge's face this episode, too. You know, it seems pretty clear that this is Helge, so I think this didn't happen the same... I mean, I know we're dealing with weird timelines here, but it doesn't seem to me that this just happened, that Eric was the one that was there before Helge. It seems like Helge, of course, is waking up from a dream here, and he's remembering this happening. So I'm assuming that this happened when he was a kid, so which would take us back to like the 40s or 50s, right?
Well, that is assuming that Helge is right now in the 40s or 50s.
As a kid, you mean?
Right.
Right, yeah, because it seems like that room is like stuck in the 80s or something, because it's certainly not like this in 2019.
Right. Is it possible that he somehow has come through time and is now, like, he could be from an earlier time and he's now in the 80s, and of course we know he's also in that 1980s timeline as a young man, but we've already seen that people can be in different timelines, right? We've had Noah now in 2 different timelines. We've seen the stranger in 2 different timelines, and they're the same age. So, yeah, but this is getting convoluted trying to explain this. But I guess what we should maybe take away from this scene is that this kid is Helge, like you said.
Yep.
And we know that because we see him waking up from a nightmare, and that is a theme that repeats itself throughout the show, is that a character will be we'll see a vision of something happen, and then the next moment the character's waking up in bed.
Right.
The same as in 1899. So here's we get to meet little Helge for the first time.
Yes.
And boy, he is cute looking.
He is. Like him, he's given little Yazin a run for his money when it comes to cuteness. Like, even with all that goop on his face. I mean, I guess with the goop on his face, I got to give it to Yazin because he's easier to look at with all the blood. But, yeah, you ruined my 1899 joke. I was going to say the same thing because that's how this episode started with Maura Franklin telling him to wake up. And there he was in the room. But, yeah, I think we covered all my notes for that scene because it seems like, it's Helge, and this is like the Helge episode of Dark so far because we're seeing like little, middle, and old Helge a lot. Mm-hmm.
He does say, I remember everything. That's what he says when he wakes up. So we're wondering, what is it you remember exactly?
Yep. Well, I guess he remembers touching the electric chair.
Because he touches the chair on the place that covers the eyes.
Yeah. And after that scene is when we go to our credits, and this is the credits. Like the credits for the show, we've seen most of the stuff by now. Like all the images that we're seeing during the opening credits and the cool song, we've pretty much seen all this stuff. But the couple things that we haven't seen are guns. Like, do you remember like any guns happening so far? Because there's 3 times in the credits where it shows like a gun being drawn. Another time there's a gun on a table and a gun slowly being lowered. And I don't remember any gunplay happening so far. Am I right about that?
Right. Yeah. I don't think.
Okay. So we got some John Wick coming up.
Now I'm kind of like, were there guns? I think that sometimes it's hard to see in those mirror images what you're looking at.
Oh, absolutely, though. I mean, I'll swear my life on it right now if I can.
Okay.
But I was just going to bring that up as an aside. We haven't seen any guns yet, but we're seeing guns in the intro. So I'm waiting to see some. I'm hoping that no shooting happens because I don't like big action. I like this quiet. I like this episode too, I should say, because it's a nice linking episode where I wouldn't say like anything huge. Well, I mean, I guess something huge does happen, but it's more like a setup episode, I think. And these are my favorite types of episodes.
So you don't want to see any frozen bullet scenes, for instance?
I mean, I'll watch them. They're fine. But I like quiet talking, and I like setup and character development. That's my thing.
So now, after the credits, we see a overhead shot of Winden, and the electric lines are an area of focus here. We see the electric lines crisscrossing, and it's 1986, and Egon opens a panel in a door and looks inside where teenage Ulrich sits, so that he can relish in the fact that Ulrich is in jail, I guess. And
he captured this rapist kidnapper dude. Interesting order of scenes here, because we have
the scene then changes from there, from teenage Ulrich to adult Ulrich in 2019, and he's looking at Mad's grave.
Right.
And we know in the last episode he discovered where his brother's body is, and now he's looking at this empty grave. We then go back to 1986, where Mikkel's in the hospital, standing in the hallway and looking at a print of the Emerald Tablet, which is kind of an odd piece of artwork to have in a hospital.
Yeah.
But okay.
I love it, though. I mean, it's visually, it's great. I mean,
Yeah.
I think representatively, I'm not too sure.
It works for the show, but then it kind of makes you wonder, I guess, is someone in the hospital in on this whole thing? Because, it's not exactly... when I go to my dentist, there are images of puppies and kittens on the ceiling, things to comfort kids.
Right.
Not these creepy images that are about alchemy.
Comforting to someone. Someone takes it and snuggles in bed with it later, but okay.
Yeah. We then see Jonas waking up in 1986, and he's been spending the night in a deer stand. I'm pretty proud of myself that I know what a deer stand is, Steve. But
yeah.
Okay.
Very cool. Yeah. My daughter dates a hunter, so I know he has a deer stand out there, and a lot of guys I work with do the same thing. And kudos to you. Mm-hmm. Have you spent the night in one?
Once Jonas, he wakes up and he looks at his letter, and then puts it back in the backpack, and climbs down the deer stand. And then he's kind of walking across the field. And the music is so super creepy and awesome. But it's like, I am traveling into the darkness.
Yep, into the unknown.
That's the feeling I got.
Well, you blazed past me. I asked you if you've ever slept in a deer stand before overnight. Have you? Since you know what they are.
I have not slept in a deer stand, but I've been in a deer stand.
Okay.
Where an old friend, took me to his family's, whatever you want to call it, land property.
Sure.
That was had a bunch of fields, and we spent the day firing different kinds of firearms with his dad supervising. It's a whole family of hunters. Yeah. And he showed us all the deer stands, and one of them was called Holiday Inn, and it was the one that was the most comfortable of all.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah.
Dudes will spend all day in those things, in the rain and everything. I'm glad Jonas was able to find one. Maybe he kind of knew about that ahead of time. I needed to talk about Ulrich's shirt here. That's my note I have for this paragraph.
Okay, good. I was hoping you would have a note for that shirt.
Yeah, it looks like a Batman logo, but it's not. It's there's a 1986 Swedish death metal band, and they're called Morbid, and that's the T-shirt that he's wearing. It's like a altered Morbid T-shirt because a couple of the letters are kind of looking funky there. Absolutely what it is, and it fits right in with his character. Like in Creator and other, good metal. And also, I thought it also was appropriate, or not appropriate, but it just added another layer to his supposed guilt. There's an eyewitness saying he raped her and confirmed that they did have sex, and she has her eye bruised up, and he's wearing this shirt that says Morbid on it. It just makes it look all the worse for him. So not a good clothing choice that day.
Okay. Yeah. We talked about band names so far, being like.
Sure. Bands like Nazareth and Creator. And we were saying about them.
With how it wasn't really meant to represent Ulrich's taste, but more the name of the band and there being a connection. So I was like, oh, is there a connection there with Morbid as well? Or is this actually representative of Ulrich's taste in music?
I think maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't have any other specific notes other than what we said about those scenes. Unless you did. It sounded like you might.
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to say was that this is the first of many instances I feel like we get in this episode where there's doubling between Ulrich and Egon.
Sure.
That theme we've already talked about. Perhaps it was the last episode, but it was the episode where he basically tells Charlotte that he became a policeman because he wanted to be everything that Egon wasn't.
Right.
And in this scene, there's a lot of instances where we discover Ulrich's actually following in Egon's footsteps in many ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If Egon sucked as bad as he thought, he wouldn't have some of these clues, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so then adult Ulrich enters the room where the medical examiner has been doing autopsies. Your friend.
My friend is back. I love it. She's made it for 4 episodes now. She's a regular.
Yeah, and I meant to put her name down, but her name is like Edie or something like that. So she actually has a name. Her character has a name.
Oh, great.
But so who knows how many times she's going to show up again.
She's totally friendly with these guys. These guys being Charlotte and Ulrich. She's like friendly and, chatty with them.
Well, she's not exactly as friendly with Ulrich as she is with Charlotte, because as soon as he comes in, she says, "What are you doing here?"
Oh, I guess you're right.
They kind of had a different rapport than she does with Charlotte, but maybe this is indicative of the fact that Charlotte is the one that has been doing the heavy lifting. Like you said, she's the one that does most of the work. So maybe Ulrich doesn't come down there very often. Yeah. So she seems surprised to see him.
She smiles a lot, though. I loved it.
Well, she thought it was amusing, I feel like, his questions. She kind of laughs at him.
Oh, we should get into that. What were the questions?
Yeah. So he asks her, what will happen to the dead boy's body? And she mentions if it's not identified, the body will be cremated and buried in an anonymous grave. Mm-hmm. And then Ulrich asks again how long ago she estimated the time of death. She mentions that the body had been dead 10 hours before it arrived for the exam. And he asks, well, is it possible the body has been preserved for longer? And she this is where she starts laughing, like, What do you mean? Like frozen? No, I would have seen if it was frozen. And then she sees he's completely serious. So she's like, how long are we talking about? And he says 33 years. And she kind of laughs again because she thinks he's just joking around. But she does, as a professional, she does, as a professional, tell him again that there would be traces in his tissue showing that freezing had occurred if that was the case. Yes.
But I mean, he's on the right path. He's asking the right questions. So I'm encouraging Ulrich to continue with this line of thinking. So I'm on his side.
It was also touching, I think, that he's asking this question. He's not just acting in his role of detective. We saw he was just looking at the grave. Yes. Where Mads' grave. And he looks really sad. And so he's maybe wrestling with himself a little bit. Maybe he would like something particular to be done with this body. Like maybe.
Sure.
And we later he has a conversation with his mom. So we can save that for then. But I feel like he's asking for more for personal reasons than necessarily in his role of detective.
Sure, yeah. But he is putting things together, though.
Yeah. So Jonas is now visiting Winden High School in 1986. This is a lot like the scene when Mikkel shows up.
I know. This is even better than the scene when Mikkel shows up. This one
because of the song choice?
Because of the song choice, because of all the kids. Like, they brought all the crazies out for this one.
I don't know if they were necessarily... Did the kids seem crazier in this scene to you?
Well, they seem more done up in 80s garb. When Mikkel came through, they kind of just reminded me of like just normal 80s. Whereas Jonas is like walking into like a hyper 80s situation.
There's people vibing to songs to the hair of headphones, and other people just talking.
Fantastic song choice, though. I Ran by Flock of Seagulls. He ran 33 years into the past, so obviously.
Yeah, I tried looking at the lyrics to see if there was anything deep I could glean out of it, and
It's a real bass song. It's very bass.
Yeah.
I am happy to say to all the not haters out there, but one criticism I've seen of the show Dark is that it's a very one-tone show with just like one color palette of people. It's all white people. There's no diversity in the show whatsoever. I'm happy to report that a black character bicycled past Jonah as he walked into. He was wearing a blue hat and a red shirt, so get your red counter down. So yeah, I saw him in a couple scenes. He was having a ball. We actually have some diversity in the show.
So one black character takes care of it. I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, thinking of the odds in Germany, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So Jonas walks into the school and he sees the flyers about Mads Nielsen being missing. Now, this must be shocking to him because he's seen Eric, he's seen Mikkel, he's seen other characters. I guess Yassine had some posters as well.
Well, he saw the same poster at the bus stop too. This is the second time he's seen this poster.
That's true. And he walks inside the school and finds a young girl sitting against the wall. It's Regina Tiedemann.
Yay.
The Queen. We're back with the Queen again.
Queen Bee. All hail.
And he asks what day it is, and she tells him it's November 9th, 1986. Mm-hmm. And she asks him if he's looking for someone. He tells her Michael Conwald. And Regina thinks about that and says, Conwell, that's the same name as Nurse Inez. So maybe you should look at the hospital.
Perfect clue.
And yeah. And then Regina gets pushed against a locker.
By a rando bully.
Yeah. We already knew she was bullied by Katarina and Ulrich, and here's just some more instances of this.
Somebody even bigger than Katarina is pushing her around now. Like, this chick was like twice her size, I think, that like bullied her. And but she was surrounded by all those yellow hooks. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the coat hangers.
Yeah, like she was surrounded by them the whole time. So I thought that was a comforting sight. My daughter Charlotte, we did some skate meet this weekend, and of course all the skaters were wearing their bright, colorful costumes, and I was taking note of everybody who was wearing yellow and everybody who was wearing red, and I was cheering on the people wearing yellow, and I was kind of wondering what was up with the people in red. Like, you guys gonna start a fight over there?
Wait, why? So why do you think yellow? Why are you finding yellow comforting?
Oh, because Mikkel used it for his little magic trick, and Jonas's raincoat, of course. And this episode, I saw Egon wearing a yellow shirt, and he seems like he's on the side of good. Regina was surrounded by yellow hooks, and it just seems like that's like I don't know, a bright, cheerful, sunny color. And red is like emotion. It's like that's like what people are wearing when they're fighting and they're like cheating on Ulrich and on the phone and stuff. And I don't know. I see like red as the angry color. So all those girls wearing red. Oh, I hope you come in last. Just kidding.
Yeah. Well, yellow are also the color of the rain. Those nuclear waste barrels. So.
Well, maybe those are good. Maybe they're full of like stuffed animals. We don't know what's in there.
Yeah, I think it's just an interesting to say it's comforting, because I think color that's like caution or warning or alert.
Sure.
But, yeah, in the context of the show, obviously we have different instances it's being used, but I kind of think of it as attention, something important is happening. That's kind of my reigning theory about yellow right now.
Speaking of raining, I mean, whenever it's raining, you put on that yellow raincoat and it protects you. So you take comfort in that protection. Anyway, we can move on if you'd like.
Yeah. So at the police station, Egon examines the photo of Ulrich and Mads and puts a big question mark in black marker over Ulrich's body. I thought this was an interesting strategy for marking evidence.
That was sloppy police work right there is what that was.
Plus, it's like, I don't know, why didn't he just draw an arrow pointing at Ulrich? I don't know. It was just a weird, like, we already know you suspect Ulrich. Like, you have to remind yourself. It's like he's marking up a yearbook. Circle the names of the boys you like. X out the names of the boys you don't like. Or the people you don't like.
He's like a little kid here. Like, because I'm thinking about myself when I was a little kid. And I first started buying, like, vinyl albums. So this would be, like, early 70s. And I remember, like, the first couple albums I bought were, like, Go-Go's Beauty and the Beat and, like, AC/DC, a Led Zeppelin album. And I wrote my name in pen on the back of, of the albums because that's what you do. That's what I did with my school books. So I wrote my name on my albums, too, which is a big mistake because it drops it in value immediately.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Unless
Egon,
your name happens to be like, one of the artists on the album.
Yeah, Jimmy Page. That's right.
So his boss, Martin Doring, and I looked the name of the boss up for this episode because I even impressed myself. I was like, Martin Doring, okay. But I think when I saw this guy, I thought, okay, is this somebody... because we had that sheep farmer that ended up being Katarina's dad.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, is this guy one of the, related to one of our key players? And I just don't know it. So, but it's funny now, if you Google Martin Doring and Netflix Dark, you get my recap. So, yeah, I'm like one of the only people that's talked about Martin.
Let's get his name out there.
Yeah. So he comes in with orders to go to the power plant and confirm who was on guard duty the night Mads disappeared.
Perfect.
Egon wants to ask if somebody else can do that job because he wants to harass Ulrich some more.
He wishes Waller worked there and he would get Waller to go down there and do it.
Yeah, these orders, they reminded me of Ulrich right away because Ulrich's been trying to also get, even before this episode, we're trying to get, the power plant is a key, like, area of suspect. So we are wanting to know who was on guard that night. And it was like Mr. Obendorf was working at the power plant. So they ended up examining him. So, Ulrich mentions that Egon mentions that Ulrich might actually be responsible for Mads' disappearance, his own brother.
Right.
And Martin, I kind of like Martin here. He tells him he's 3 months away from retirement and to remember that police investigation is done with evidence rather than hunches.
That's correct. I mean, sometimes you got to trust your gut, and sometimes you need those hunches. I wouldn't have given Egon that advice there as his boss. I probably would have given him some leeway to go out with a bang and, work up until his last day, like working steadily. But, yeah, he was telling him, we got other people on this. I need you to go to the power plant. Do your thing, Egon. Come on now. Mr. Retirement. Mm-hmm. We got a retired guy in our office, too, that just will never leave. He'll never, ever retire.
Well, maybe not all the advice that he gave him was warranted, but I do think his point here is he's seeing that he's wanting Egon to work on this missing boy case, and he's just fixated on Ulrich. And I feel like that was good as his boss for him to recognize you're barking up the wrong tree. You need to stay with the business here. Ulrich's in this cell, so you don't need to be. It's a teenage kid, so I feel like he's. At the same time, it's sort of a trope in detective stories where the boss is sarcastic with you. So it could just be a storytelling device. Anything else on this scene?
Not on this scene in particular. I'm ready for the next one, but I've got to point out that Egon was wearing that yellow shirt. Mads in the picture wearing that yellow shirt. A yellow sunshine shirt, as a matter of fact. Mads' shirt. Yep.
Yeah, Egon's yellow shirt is not quite as bright as the yellows that we see, but it is yellowish.
He
can't be wearing a bright yellow shirt. So Ulrich is sitting on the floor now, surrounded by a circle of papers that he has pulled out of his brother's case file, including the picture of himself with the question mark over it.
Yeah, that's rad. I love like the tie-ins between the two times. It's awesome.
Yeah. And this image has become a motif now where we've seen the stranger doing this kind of thing.
Yep.
We've seen
who else in this
Jonas doing this, where you're sort of looking for clues with all of these papers laid out, and it's kind of like we're looking at this evidence too, so we're also investigating this at the same time. So they almost become stand-ins for us as we're trying to puzzle everything out.
That's right. Same thing's happened in Yellow Jackets this week. Somebody's doing the exact same thing. And then Barry also on HBO this week. They had a gentleman was doing the exact same thing in his garage, unbeknownst to everyone. He seemed like he had it all together, but he had like a crazy man board in his garage. Mm-hmm. Did we skip over? No, we didn't. We haven't skipped over anything yet. Continue on, Lindsay.
So Egon has now shown up at the power plant in 1986. He's pressing the buzzer to gain entry, and out comes middle-aged Helge, who comes to answer this buzzer. And Egon tells him that his boss is wanting him to corroborate evidence about who was working that night that Mads went missing. Helge kind of fobs him off and says he can't really talk about that right now because he's on duty, but he's going to make an appointment to visit the station. Egon is like, very good, let's set that appointment right now. Mm-hmm. Smart thing there, like you got to strike when the iron's hot. You said you'd come, so let's just set a date and time.
Right.
So they make an appointment for Tuesday, but Egon still doesn't hesitate to throw in a couple of preliminary investigative questions.
Yeah, some Ulrich stuff. Like, before I leave, Ulrich, he sucks, right?
Yeah.
I love how anytime you ask anybody about Ulrich, everybody's like, I don't know, dude. I don't know what you're talking about. Even Helge here is like, no, Ulrich has nothing to do with crap.
Yeah, exactly. Did you see Ulrich that night? But this other Why Not Forest Road, isn't it quicker? Because he hears Helge say that he took
the state
road.
Yeah.
And Egon finds that very curious.
Mm-hmm. And so does Ulrich. He thinks it's curious too.
Mm-hmm.
He makes up a fake excuse. Helge is it is Helge, right? Yeah. He's really suspicious, really nervous, really worried. It's written all over his face. Obvious lie about picking up something for his dad. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's terrible. And you can tell he's terrible. He's a terrible liar. He's terrible at hiding his feelings here. And his face is scarred. You can tell his face is scarred here. And I think this is where I first noticed how badly his face was. Because, Yana talked about it either last episode or this episode. And
yeah, no, I think you were saying that his demeanor was very suspicious.
Yep. And I'm going to do I stepped out of the suspension of disbelief for a second here. I know we're dealing with a time travel show. I know. But he says, let's meet. How about the day after tomorrow? Tuesday. That means today, the day they're sitting here talking, is Sunday. So Jonas went to school on a Sunday. Everybody's in school. Everybody's working on a Sunday. I think that's a show mistake right here is what I'm getting at. This isn't part of the plot. Like Germany doesn't run on a Sunday like this. So I think they got a little something wrong there.
Yeah, that's true. Unless, do we know what the work week looks like for Germany?
Well, I know they don't have school on Sunday. Absolutely. It's a very religious, country. I mean, they would absolutely be in church. They wouldn't be working and all that stuff.
Well, I don't know. Perhaps they wanted their days to match the calendar or whatever. Yep. Like, in 1986, November 9th was on a Tuesday, so we're going to say Tuesday. But yeah, this is very interesting, Steve, but it's very nitpicky.
I should make one of those annoying YouTube videos about it. On the So Dark, episode 7. Clearly, and have like I don't know. I hate those videos. But that's what I'm doing here is pointing out a show error, basically.
This is great podcasting.
Yeah. I had a couple other questions about this, too. Okay. Egon. His last name, what is his last name? Tiedemann. Egon Tiedemann. He's the police officer. And
he's the father of Claudia.
So, like, it seems like at this point, Claudia is, like, running the power plant right now. And he was saying something in the car about how the power plant's changed everything. So why he couldn't just ask Claudia, just ask his own daughter. I don't know why he had to be stopped at the gate and not let in when his own daughter is, at the plant. Maybe there's more to it than I realized. Maybe they're estranged because I haven't seen them hang out yet. But I just thought I just made that connection. And I was like, well, wait a second. What's Helge's last name? He's a Doppler, right? Is that correct?
He's a Doppler, yes.
Okay, because I'm just trying to get these people like straight in my mind, like whose parents are who and who's in what place. And I was like, it seems like Egon could have just talked to his daughter there, but maybe there's a reason he did not.
Yeah. I think I could be wrong, but I feel like it's protocol that when you try to investigate the suspect themselves without intervention from a third party. If he had trouble finding Helge and he couldn't locate him, then he might go to Claudia to say, like, have you heard from Helge? But he was wanting, I mean, you bring up a good point. It's like, I don't know. Why wouldn't he corroborate the shift change with Claudia, unless he said, like, maybe things are strained between him and his daughter. But I also think they wanted to show the doubling between him and Ulrich.
Right.
Because Ulrich did this very similar thing where he went to the gate and was trying to ask questions through it. So, yeah, I think it's mainly because of that.
These time jumps and, like, these parallels are just fascinating, the way they're showing up at the power plant at the same time. They're going into the caves, and I just love it. I love, like, the scene to scene going, the time jumps. I love it. That's all. You can continue.
Yeah. Well, I just thought of another thing. Again, we're being nitpicky, but it's also, I think a lot of times when you do an investigation, they're trying to do it casually. If he was approaching Claudia, that would be an official, like, we are officially investigating you, as opposed to, like, we're not investigating you, we're just checking our information, and you try to make it casual so that because then people start clamming up and wanting lawyers and all that kind of stuff. So he's trying to take that casual approach initially before he takes more official steps.
Okay.
I'm going to go with that, Steve.
All right. Yeah, I'll go with you there. All right. Do you mind if I get a break before we continue?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Well, we're going to take a break, y'all. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Hey guys, it's Michael,
Roy, and Travis
with the Bad Potatoes Podcast. We talk about movies, pop culture, and TV, but mostly movies.
You can find us on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify by searching the Bad Potatoes Pod. You can also find us on Instagram at Bad Potatoes Pod, on Twitter at the Bad Potatoes Pod _, and on YouTube at Bad Potatoes Podcast.
Please comment, follow, listen, subscribe, and don't forget to smash potato that like button. We appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. We are back, And I think our next scene is going to take us into 2019. Is that right, Lindsay?
Yeah, so back in 2019, Ulrich is looking at that same journal that Egon used and finds the note saying, "Why not Forest Road?"
Yes.
Ulrich finds the file of people who were questioned from the power plant and finds the information that Helge was scheduled to come to the police station for an appointment, but he never showed up.
Helge, I didn't think he was going to. He looked too nervous and too shifty. I'm not surprised at all he didn't show.
Yeah, he looked a little shady about the whole thing.
I think I know why he didn't go. Later on in this episode, Peter says something about an accident that Helge had in 1986. So maybe that accident interfered with it somehow.
Oh, he tells. Yeah, let's bookmark this to talk about when we get there, because we have the date.
Yes.
That
today's November 9th is what Regina told us. That was 1986 though. Yeah, that's right. November 9th, 1986.
Okay. So at another part of town, Charlotte has the search warrant. Waller brought it to her while she was on the phone with somebody. She was having some kind of a phone call about an earthquake she felt.
Right. Yeah.
Which I don't remember that in the episode, but I guess maybe about the same time the lights were flickering.
I do. Yeah, the lights were flickering and she was at her car in the dark and she was kind of like keeping balance, like going like this with her arms, like she was feeling it. That was last episode.
So Waller comes in, gives her that search warrant. She does not tell Ulrich this information and goes by herself.
Yep. Well, he's a wild card when it comes to that power plant. That wouldn't be a great idea to take him back there. I think that was a smart move.
Maybe it was, but still, they're supposed to be partners, and he would want to go.
Okay, yeah, fair. Yep.
So when she arrives there, she has a lot of police cars and all this extra manpower. This is what I'm saying. Why wouldn't she bring Ulrich?
Okay, gotcha.
So Alexander comes to greet them, accompanied by all of his heavily armed dudes, his security guards. But Charlotte shows him the search warrant, and he just doesn't have a choice. He has to let her in.
Not a word spoken this whole scene. I love it.
Mm-hmm. And Ulrich calls and tells Charlotte that Helge was supposed to be questioned but failed to show up in 1986. So he even calls her while she's on the power plant grounds, and she doesn't bring this up once. Go ahead, sorry.
I didn't make that connection at the time that Ulrich wasn't there and she didn't invite him along. I'm just thinking off the cuff here, and I guess it was intentional, just based on the last time he was there. She was like, I want us to go search it. I want us to canvass the area. I don't want any trouble. I don't want Ulrich in there yelling at people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was probably a wise move, but I think if Ulrich found out, he'd be pretty pissed.
I think he's on his last leg right now because, one more thing happens and he's going to get suspended. So I'm just waiting for that moment to happen.
Yeah. But Ulrich does call her and mentions that Helge was supposed to be questioned but failed to show up. Charlotte reminds him that Helge has dementia. So even though he's acted weird the last few days, that doesn't make him guilty of murder. Because Ulrich's bringing up the fact that, he was at the cabin the night that Yasin went missing. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of doing the same thing that Egon was doing with Ulrich. He's just fixated on Helge and is convinced that he's the guilty party, which makes him a bad, that's lousy detective working when you only chase one lead, especially when it's not solid. It's very paper thin.
I guess you're right, but I just respect his tenacity, and I know he's on the right path, so I'm kind of encouraging it because I just like to see him uncover things like an onion, like this one little piece at a time. I really enjoy watching it, so I'm giving him a pass because I enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, this is what detective shows are made. Police procedurals are made of that detective with tenacity that doesn't give up even when it looks like they're wrong. So that's what we're trained to like. At the same time, it's only good detective work if the person's on the right track, and that sort of remains to be seen right now. We do know that Helge knows more than he's letting on. But the fact that this is really the only lead that Ulrich is pursuing, makes it sus. I feel like that he tends to get fixated on one person. But again, I think they're doing that because we're seeing how Ulrich lets his prejudices against people, short-sightedness about people, sort of lead him to make very rash decisions, and he doesn't think clearly, because like what happened with Regina, he's just rushing to the next thing, going from he's just like rushing from one thing to another, just desperate to get answers.
Well, he does sit there in his son's room and stare at the papers for a while, so he is thinking about stuff. Yeah. I do want to get back to Charlotte, but we have to talk about Jonas before we can get back to her. So, yeah, I'm with you here.
Okay, Jonas walks in the rain, and Egon stops to pick him up, automatically suspicious of this new stranger. And I think this adds to my statement before that I said Egon hates kids. Teens in particular. He was nice to Mikkel, but with Jonas, once he starts questioning you, he's just not going to let up. He's like, shouldn't you be in school? Why didn't your parents take you? Where do your parents work? It's kind of like under the skin, Steve. I mean,
yeah, but I disagree. I thought he was actually pretty cool with Jonas. I mean, he was concerned. There was obviously a kid walking down the road, so gives him a ride. That's unusual. Jonas doesn't give him very good answers, and it's obvious he's holding something back. And Egon's a detective. He can pick these things up. So I think he knows that Jonas is lying. But he's still going along with it, and he still gives him a ride to the hospital, and he doesn't walk him inside and take him to reception and say he is here for his arm. He just drops him off and is later. And then they're talking about the headphones, and he's giggling a little bit with Jonas there. When he took the shortcut, I was a little nervous. I was like, what's going to happen? I don't like this at all. But it actually was a shortcut, so that was okay. But yeah, I had a different perspective. I thought Egon was fine here, and I thought it was Jonas that I was frustrated with, because I was like, okay, this is why you didn't get in the car with your mom and your grandpa the other night, because you didn't want to get asked a bunch of questions that you weren't able to handle, didn't have good answers for. So you've had a good while now to think about a good cover story, and he has not come up with a good cover story.
See, I see that differently, Steve.
Okay.
I feel like Jonas was pretty smart here.
Okay.
Because he finds a way to tell the truth. He asks him, why aren't you in school? Or why didn't your parents drive you? And he mentions, my father is dead. Yeah. My mother is at work. And then he tells him, where does she work? And he very smartly says, the power plant.
Yeah,
because there are so many people that work at the power plant that...
Plus, she does work at the power plant. That's where she gives them the massages.
That's true.
So everything was a bald-faced truth.
And Jonas really was going to the hospital. Maybe he wasn't going because he's sick, but he really is going to the hospital. He's not doing anything shady. He's coming to try to get help the same way Mikkel did. Mikkel went to the people he knew or maybe thought he could count on.
Right.
He went to the police station. He goes to the school. Jonas is going to the hospital where one of his relatives works. So he's very just like Egon and Ulrich are doubling, Jonas and Mikkel are doubling the steps that Mikkel is taking. So I thought that, I don't know, I was really proud of Jonas here, how he acted, and I saw Egon you're right that he didn't go into the hospital, but maybe he doesn't like getting wet. Plus, he needed to get back to harass Ulrich. But I thought the way he was asking questions wasn't kind. It wasn't mean, but he was just suspicious. And it's okay if you're suspicious, but you can talk to somebody in a conversational way.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
But I got to say, it wasn't raining when he dropped Jonas off. This rain comes hard, and then it stops, and it doesn't leave any puddles. So, like, this is some crazy wind and rain.
Yeah.
It wasn't raining when he dropped him off, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I thought that we brought out Jonas's smile nicely in this episode. And it was Egon who brought out that huge smile when Egon asked Jonas about Satanism and how are any kids into Satanism? And Jonas just openly like laughs before he collects himself and gives Egon like a serious answer, like, no, that's not a thing. And I love that moment.
Yeah, that was funny. Also about the earphones, the earbuds.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "What are those?" And Jonas is like, "They're ear." It's like it becomes a comedy for a minute. Where he's like,
does.
"You put them in your ears," and Egon just doesn't believe him. And yeah, the laugh that Jonas did here was the kind of the same one that it reminded me of the laugh when he's with Bartosz, and Bartosz mentions, "I talked to Eric's dealer," and then Jonas is kind of like, he laughs really quickly, like, what? So he's, it was that same laugh, but.
More of that, please. I love it.
Yeah. So back in 2019, Charlotte has taken Ulrich's call to heart, but doesn't really tell him. Because she sort of tells him, like, he just has dementia, there's nothing to it. But she does follow up on this hunch because she is a good detective, Steve.
Well, yeah, she sees that, like, side road and, like, where a car could have been. So absolutely follow that road. Heck yeah. And I love the way she says it twice. Helge is dement. I love the way she, like, stresses that dementa.
Yeah. This was also another doubling thing here, because Egon takes this shortcut, which is Forest Road, and it cuts to Charlotte walking up Forest Road. Yep. So it's kind of like doing the same thing.
Not exactly.
In two different time periods.
I'm gonna not yes and I'm gonna no but you here.
Okay.
Forest Road is actually the road that everybody's taken, that Egon picks up Jonas on, that they pick up that wildlife. Charlotte picks up that wildlife camera footage from. That's all Forest Road. The road that she's on right now is like just like a utility back road. It's just like a utility, that's like a mud road. It's not like a road that you would be able to take from work. Like Helge wouldn't take that muddy road down like the power lines to go home. He would take Forest Road.
I thought it was because Egon turns off of the main road and takes the shortcut, and then Charlotte was also taking a side road. So I thought those two were the same roads, but maybe not.
That's just my headcanon, is that this is just like a utility, because every utility line, power lines, I do water utilities. I'm very familiar with these roads. You can see them on Google Maps, but they're not like marked as roads, where I think like Forest Road is the road along the forest. State Road is like the highway. Like we don't ever see that because nobody takes a state road. Except for Helge, allegedly one night, and we know that's a lie. Or we suspect that's a lie, I should say.
So following this, this sort of takes away from my theory, but I guess I thought that she was taking Forest Road to see where it led, but I guess she just sees this back road then and decides to walk down it.
Just see, like, anytime somebody drives down here, where do they go? Let's find out.
Yeah. And she finds the gate on the side of the power plant where Claudia visited so long ago with Bernd.
This is where the women spelunk.
Yeah, it was like, was this equipment just sitting there, or did she just happen to have it in the car? That was, I don't know, it was like...
Yeah, me and Heather laughed at this scene, and again, we're just going to have to take it like that Sunday thing. It's a suspension of disbelief. I mean, there's no way she could do that without somebody on top helping her out, and she's obviously by herself. So this is kind of like a non-starter here.
So she descends into the caves and finds the spot where the wall of yellow barrels used to be.
Right. I was afraid she was going to find them.
She doesn't find them, but she finds these pieces of brightly colored yellow
evidence,
shrapnel, or whatnot.
Yeah, scrapings from the barrel, like just paint shavings from the side of the barrels where they got shifted around.
Mm-hmm. And then she finds a metal door like the one that Ulrich found, but it's probably a different door since this is a different entrance than Ulrich used.
Absolutely. But it's interesting that there's multiple doors installed, like not just Jonas's special door that we all know about now, but there's, these actual doors that like are industrial doors, like with the door stoppers on the bottom and everything. So these are power plant doors here.
And as she pans down, like visually on the door,
right?
Like you said, there's a lock, but there's also looks like, I don't know, burn marks or something, like black on where the door and the door jamb come together. Yeah, it looks like it's blackened, like maybe burnt or something. Yeah, I wasn't sure.
I wasn't either. My first viewing, I immediately thought, oh, that's the door that Ulrich was trying to like get in. Obviously, that was a wrong thought, but that's what I was thinking those black marks were, where he like put his crowbar and like messed up the door. But I think you're right. I think it was like some kind of burn mark or some kind of like chemical, like like chlorine and like OP-37 will leave like residuals, like if it is up against something. So. Could be like a chemical residual of some sort.
So Jonas arrives at the hospital and asks to speak to Inez Conwald. Her coworker says she's outside with the little boy. And he says, what little boy? And this is another thing where I just sort of suspend disbelief, because I really don't think you would answer questions like this in a hospital, but I think there's more security protocols now than there was in 1987. So this seems odd to us that she would say the little boy, and the other nurse, she feels suspicious since they still aren't really sure who this little boy is. So she starts to be a little more edgy about answering these questions.
Right.
And he tells her that Inez is part of his family. So she ends up telling him where he can find her, and he rushes off.
Correct. I actually don't have any notes for that scene. I think that's just a standalone paragraph. You did it, Lindsay. I have no jokes.
Oh, dang. Okay. So Ulrich takes it upon himself to go question Helge.
Oh God, this scene.
yes. After Charlotte told him, "Slow your roll, Ulrich. Helge est dement." Ulrich still decides he's just gonna use his detective instincts that you complimented before, Steve.
I'm not complimenting him here. He's a wild card in this part.
So yeah, Ulrich wakes him up, and
I'm sorry, I'm giggling. It's just such like an
I know,
awkward bad scene.
It's so unprofessional.
Yeah.
So he basically makes him wake up, and Helge reacts very violently to the sight of Ulrich.
Immediately, yes. His heart starts going up.
Yeah. And then Ulrich begins to just rapid fire question him about, why didn't you go to your appointment? And why didn't you take Forest Road? And Helge is saying, it's him. It was him. I know you. And finally, an employee of the nursing home comes in and stops Ulrich from being able to continue in this line of questioning. But when he says, it's him, it was him, I know you, this sets off Ulrich, and he grabs Helge and starts like yelling, where's my son? Where's Mikkel? The nurse comes in, and Helge says, I can change it. I can change the past and the future.
I believe him. I mean, we've seen him like as a little kid in that weird room. You were speculating when that was. We don't know when that was. Mm-hmm. We know he's slipping in and out of time. So I believe him, except for he's dement. Don't you know this, Ulrich?
But yeah, I mean, I can understand why Ulrich would latch on, because when he says, I can change the past and the future, he's just like, what do you mean by that? That must mean you're guilty. That must mean you're guilty. He doesn't view it as maybe Helge can help me. He views it as an admission of guilt.
I like how his heart rate started going up before Ulrich started flipping out. So he was already immediately at the sight of his face was starting to freak out. And, Helge's, we haven't seen his heart rate race like this by seeing anybody else. Like, we've seen nurses come and go. We've seen Peter come and go. So obviously Ulrich is like a lightning rod for him. Mm-hmm. Yep. He's a cop. He's like, Helge is all like, ACAB, man. Like, get out of here, buddy. Helge hates cops, period. Like, he hated being questioned at the power plant. He doesn't want to be questioned here either.
Yeah. So at the hospital in 1986, Jonas walks outside. Okay, this is the scene of the episode, probably, right? He walks outside and he finally sees Mikkel, and the way that they do it is, we see Inez, like, she walks out, she's sort of covering Mikkel with her body.
Right.
And then when she moves to the side, then he finally gets a look and he sees Mikkel sitting there on the bench with his little foot cast, and he looks so innocent and sweet here. Mikkel is just
and he's warmed up to Inez now. You can see them over there, like, while this whole scene's going on. They're at the bench, oblivious, just having a ball, like having lunch and talking. So he's talking to her now. So,
Yeah, he gives her, and she says something like, I found another one, and she presents him with something. I didn't really get a chance at what that was, but they're enjoying a moment together, and she's finding ways to make him smile and to make him happy. So Jonas is very taken aback to see this, and he's momentarily sort of frozen.
It's confirmation, like what the letter said. It's complete confirmation.
Yeah. So he's then interrupted by the stranger, Ike Larson, as you would say.
Yeah.
The stranger just kind of shows up behind a van, like, hello, I am here, and just starts a topic mid-sentence.
I have a theory about that. Should I go ahead and say it now? Because
yeah, sure.
When Jonas went into the cave, we saw the stranger up there by a tree, like writing his little notebook, looking at his time. So this dude is like watching Jonas and like timing him, helping him along the way, and it seems like he knows where he's going to be at certain times. I mean, he's a time traveler, the stranger is, right? So like, yeah, he knew where Jonas was going to be the moment that that happened. So that's, because we saw him doing that. That's not a theory, that's a fact. He knew where he was going to be, and he knew where he was going to be, and he had the means to get there. Exactly, yes.
So yes, here's the proof that the stranger knows more than he's letting on. So Jonas reacts to the stranger's presence with surprising calmness. I felt like he wasn't like, what are you doing here? He's not like a Helge here. He's just like, he thinks this might be proof that he's crazy.
Well, he's out of his element right now, and he does question that it might be hallucinating, but he's not too surprised because he's just already shocked as it is. So what's one more shock on top of another?
Mm-hmm. So he thinks maybe he's crazy just like his father.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And the stranger says that however hard it is to accept, that is your father.
Right.
And then Jonas starts connecting the dots,
right,
shall we say, about the other facts that arise out of this, that Ulrich is his grandfather and Martha is his aunt.
Right. That's like a Game of Thrones moment there, because we had like Jon Snow with Daenerys Targaryen. It turned out to be his aunt. And this is about the exact same time that this aired. That was being aired. So, yeah. And that means that Magnus is his cool uncle, right? Mm-hmm. That's good news right there.
His thought is, I have to put all this mess right. And I will do that by taking Mikkel back to my time.
Right.
But the stranger stops him and gets the most animated we've ever seen him yet. He's basically whisper yelling in his face.
Yeah.
And saying, if you intervene, he won't meet your mother and you will not be born. And every decision for is a decision against.
I mean, it seems, okay, we got a great paradox here, because it seems like he could run up to Mikkel. Hey, it's me, Jonas. You know, I got stuck here too, but I know how to get back. Let's go, buddy. And then they go back. Like,
yeah.
Would like the moment that they step through, would he like disappear like Michael J. Fox and like, you know, Back to the Future? Like, have they seen Back to the Future? Do they know what happens? I mean... I'm sure Jonas has seen Back to the Future by this point. But yeah, it makes me very curious what would happen if what the stranger is saying makes solid sense. And I believe the stranger. But at the same time, it makes me curious, like if Jonas had coaxed Mikkel back with him, what would have I mean, I know our show would have been over. Our show would have been different at that point, I guess, because it didn't happen. But it's something that absolutely could have happened. Absolutely, it could have happened, I think. And it would have screwed things up, I guess, because the stranger says you're messing with things you shouldn't mess with. So, yeah, maybe that's the warning. Maybe the stranger is like, knows something that we don't.
Yeah.
Well, I hope he does.
What's interesting, I mean, it's an interesting, like, conundrum.
Right.
Because, yes, if Mikkel never met his mother, Jonas would not be born, and therefore the stranger well, okay, this is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Jonas would not be born,
right,
and then that would be sad for him because he'd no longer get to continue his existence. But does that mean philosophically you could say,
yes,
well, is that the right thing to do? You know, not very many people have the maturity to say, like, yes, life would be better if I didn't exist. So I'm going to set this right. I'm going to make sure Mikkel gets home, hell or high water.
I mean, it seems like if you're like an honorable person, it seems like you would want to do that for the sake of Martha and for the sake of Mikkel's parents and everybody who's worried about him back in 2019. It seems like that's what you would want to do. But yeah, it's a bit. It
kind of reminds me of that butterfly. Remember the butterfly effect?
Absolutely.
You know, remember that movie? Yeah, and he has to come to the realization that I love this person so much, and it's better if we never meet.
Right.
In that situation, he's able to kind of still pass her on the street every once in a while. But yeah, I think that, you know, they've set up an impossible situation here for Jonas where he really has no choice. I mean, he does have to make a choice because the stranger said every decision for is a decision against. And what will you choose? And so he puts this giant responsibility smack dab at Jonas's feet and says, all right, it's up to you. Yes, you can do this, but what will the impact be? Are you really ready for those ramifications?
Right. He ended that conversation, he being the stranger, ended that conversation terribly. You don't end the conversation with this riddle and then a question and then run away. I mean, it seems like the conversation should be ended like, okay, Jonas, do you understand everything I just told you? Do you get it? Okay, you're going back. Okay. Instead of this riddle, like, what are you going to do? And then he like disappears off into the mist to leave Jonas crying with a big fat tear in his eye. Oh, man, Jonas is crying. I don't like it.
So back in 2019, Charlotte and Ulrich talk at the station. She's decided to suspend him for now. And he just keeps repeating that Helge was responsible. He tells her everything Helge said. And, Charlotte sends him home and he gives one more tidbit. Why not Forest Road? That's what Egon wanted to ask Helge.
Right.
So even though she's told him to take a couple weeks off, he's still like, oh, and another thing. Which is what we would expect of Ulrich. He's only doing what we expect of him. We can't fault him for that.
But she takes that. She takes that Forest Road question and she packs it away, and she's gonna forward it later.
So in 1986, Helge gets into his car. He opens the glove compartment and finds a radar candy bar and takes a bite.
Aha! I mean, come on, Helge.
I mean, if we had any suspicions here, it's kind of like Peter with the red dirt, like.
That's right. Yeah, and that ugly coat. I mean, what coat? Did you get a load of that coat he was wearing?
No.
Oh my gosh, you should rewatch it again. It's like such a bad cut. It's a bad design. It's ill-fitting, and it looks like it's made out of like an old sofa or something. That alone would make him guilty, in my opinion, just that jacket. But the Raider candy bar, yeah, that's like his calling card. And not a smart dude, it seems like.
Well, his fashion lets us know he doesn't know a lot about how to dress
Right.
for the ladies. But I really like the song here they used, which is called Cow Song for some reason.
Right.
Meredith Monk and Colin Walcott. This reminded me a lot of the song we had in 1899 where it was about, they were talking about that Danish tradition of opening the window until your soul can leave. That sort of funeral dirge song that they played. It kind of reminded me of that. It's not the same artist, obviously. It was a wordless song. I liked that song. It was very, kind of mysterious and thoughtful.
Yeah, when you got Egon, he's more of like a pop dude. He's always listening to pop music in the background, like when he was riding with Jonas. I didn't mention that, but yeah, they were listening to like a really bubblegum pop song, like a classic German pop song in his car. He loves to groove out to the pop music, and I guess Helge is more of an instrumental type of dude, I suppose.
Well, I don't think that was music he was listening to. I think that was, it was non-diegetic music. But
okay, I gotcha.
But yeah, that was, it was like Egon's always listening. Like when he was making that report about the sheep, the 33 sheep. He was listening to some music in the office. That's really funny. I remember. Okay, so we cut to teenage Katerina at the station, and she's telling Egon that Ulrich didn't force himself on her and that she pressured him to get condoms and that it was really her idea. Egon doesn't really believe her and asks her why she has the black eye. Right. And she says, I fell.
Not a good lie. It's a terrible lie. It really is. And it makes Ulrich look bad here. It really does.
Yeah, and the camera cuts to teenage Ulrich sitting in his cell.
Yep, I didn't really have any other
yeah.
notes for that scene other than what I just said. Just Ulrich looks very guilty to Egon, and Egon's really persistent about getting Ulrich for this one.
Yeah. It's the old, I fell off my bike routine that all the kids like. She even has a moped, so she, or a scooter or something, so she could use that.
I mean, she should have said she got in a fight with somebody, and that would have been a more believable story, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was beating up on Regina, your granddaughter.
That's right.
So in 2019, then after that, we were looking at teenage Ulrich. We now are looking at adult Ulrich. In 2019, he arrives home to find Katerina sitting alone downstairs. And this is such a cool cut as well, because we just saw Katerina defending him, and now they cut to this conversation between Ulrich and Katerina as adults.
Yes.
And she finally tells him she knows about his affair with Hannah.
Oh, the last thing she says in 1986 is Ulrich would never hurt me. Then it cuts to 1986, and she's sitting there looking pretty hurt.
Yeah. He starts to explain, and she counters with, "Please don't."
Yeah, you don't. That's that's a bad move, Ulrich.
Because he says, "Let me explain."
Explain what?
Like,
no,
yeah,
Ulrich.
exactly.
No.
What will you explain?
You see,
and she
Hannah's
really
hot.
has to.
She's really hot, and
yeah.
let me just explain how hot she is to you.
Yeah. So before leaving the house, or at least leaving the room, Katerina says also that Jana called to talk about Mads, and that, her son is missing, but all Jana can talk about is Mads. And she says that she thought her family were the assholes.
Oh, yeah, you caught that too. So obviously, I'm thinking that her black eye in 1986 is a family affair. That's what I think.
Affair, okay.
Yeah, I think somebody in her family who's an asshole might have clocked her. That's just my suspicion right now.
I don't know. So what did you think about this scene? Did you like how Katerina confronted Ulrich?
I mean, yeah, this scene was super powerful, and it made me think that Ulrich, the actor playing Ulrich, might be a stage actor. The way his body language was, the way his motions were, like trying to grab her, and then like being rejected, and she doesn't want him to touch her, and like his body language when every time that she mentions like "I know" or Hannah's name comes up, he just shrinks into himself even more. So yeah, I really like this confrontation. I'm glad it's out on the table now. I don't know where they're going to go from here, but it's better that they're talking about it now. But Katerina, I mean, she's been like in quite a state ever since her boy has been missing, and I guess she's had it at this point, and I don't know what spurned her to like actually. I guess maybe it was the phone call with Hannah. Was that the last thing we saw before this scene? I think maybe that confirmation.
She makes the phone call.
She waited until she had some good confirmation to bring it up with him, and that's right too. In Yellow Jackets, Shauna thought Jeff was having an affair, but Jeff was not having an affair the whole time. So you never know.
I haven't seen Yellow Jackets.
I know you haven't. That's why I love to bring up specifics about it.
But she also says something like, "I think I've always suspected." So that was Katerina says that.
Okay.
So she's suspected this affair, but she sort of was in denial and didn't want to believe it. I thought that was interesting because you had mentioned even back the fact that she like sniffs Ulrich's sweatshirt.
Yeah.
But she doesn't, she just kind of folds it and puts it back on the chair. She's not going to bring it up.
She doesn't fixate on it, but she's suspicious. Yes.
Yeah.
But just like with
So,
Ulrich,
but
like she's unpeeling the onion layers, and she's finding more and more the deeper she goes.
Yeah, I think after, in the last episode, Katarina got one of our worst characters. I can't remember. One of us gave it to Ulrich and one of us gave it to Katarina.
That's right.
But yeah, she was beating up on Regina, and so yeah, we both hated her last episode. But this episode definitely makes me sympathetic for her because I liked how she confronted him. It was very no nonsense, no bullshit, and she did it very dignified and wasn't all weepy and how could you do this to me. She's just like very disengaged, very cool as a cucumber about the whole thing.
That's true. You're right. Last episode she was wilding out, and she's lucky she's not in jail. I mean, she really is lucky she's not in jail. And I'd actually forgotten all about that because I'm going episode by episode here. I'm viewing her a little differently this episode, but yeah, never forget that she was wilding out on Regina.
So then back in 1986, Jonas comes back into the hospital and sees Mikkel at the vending machine. He seems almost ready to approach him again, but stops when Hannah comes down the hall. And he's watching his parents as they have this conversation that is either he can't really hear them or the way it's filmed is you can't hear their words. He's just watching how they interact. And how Mikkel shares his candy bar with Hannah, and they're meet-cuting all over the place. And Mikkel's actually almost, before Hannah was the one sort of driving the conversation. And this time Mikkel is the one that says hi to her, and they seem to be chatting and getting along really well. And then there's this flashback of the words the stranger says, and Jonas ends up just leaving without saying anything to them.
Watching history be made right there in the hallway. And yeah, that's the thing that sticks out in Hannah's mind is that he had a broken leg, Mikkel did, because that's what she tells Jonas. She doesn't really say much else. She just says he had a broken leg, and he was like limping huge down the hallway there. His hair was all flopping because he was not doing great with his crutches. But yeah, that's probably why she remembers him with a broken leg, because he was hobbling all over the place. They're adorable. Both of them are adorable. I love these kids playing them.
In 2019, Ulrich has gone to his mother's house, and he asks Jana if she would want to know what happened to Mads. And she tells him no. She likes imagining him still alive and free somewhere. That it was Trond's idea to purchase that grave marker because he thought it might give her some peace, but she doesn't really, even though she goes there to visit,
right?
She doesn't really want to know what happened to his body. She'd rather get to just keep imagining that he's still out there somewhere enjoying life.
That makes sense, except for it doesn't make sense the fact that she keeps visiting his grave and putting the figures on it. That's confusing.
Yeah.
But yeah, she says some other interesting stuff to him here, so I'll let you continue.
Yeah. Well, I think it gets into that thing the song lyrics you mentioned about never saying goodbye. She wants to keep their relationship alive and is, I don't want to use the word pathetic, but I can't think of another word. It's like it's pathetic or it's not much of a relationship to have a one-sided relationship with somebody's grave marker. But she has the idea of him still alive. The grave says infinity on it.
Okay.
So he's not really dead.
Okay.
But it's her way of sort of engaging with him to know that he's infinitely out there. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So he finally asks what she wanted to tell him, and she mentions that a week before Mads disappeared, she saw a priest arguing with a man and thought this was really odd to see a priest, because I guess priests never argue.
They never do. They're godly figures.
Yeah, they never get mad at all of anything. Okay. So now in 2019, that was back in 1986. Now it's 2019, and she saw the same man. And Ulrich thinks she's talking about the priest, and she said, no, not the priest, the other man that he was arguing with, but he didn't look any older, and he had a weird mark in his ear. And as she's sharing this information, the screen cuts to this middle-aged Helge who's going into the hatch with his raincoat.
Another bingo. We are like, okay, so every time we've seen somebody dragging bodies around with that green raincoat, it's been Helge this whole time. It's been middle-aged Helge. So it made sense to me that she saw the priest, just like Ulrich. I was like, oh, you saw the priest. Okay, that makes sense, because we saw him in both times too. Oh, so now you're saying Helge is also the same age in both times. Similar to our boys Jonas and Mikkel now too. So yes, time traveling Helge, I guess, right?
Yeah, so Helge is going into these time periods. He had, when he approached Yasin, remember he says, Noah sent me?
Yep.
So yeah.
And he's trying to push this time traveling crap on Claudia too, because he gave Claudia that time traveling book at one point in episode 2 or 3.
Yes.
So he's trying to lure her in here. I don't know, man. Helge, keep to yourself. I don't like Helge anymore.
Lure her in, like he wants to get her involved in his schemes.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. Come with me to the faraway land. And she's like, no, I'm hanging out with Trant. He's my man.
So did you have any other notes for this?
I was going to go into a whole thing about cremation, but I don't have to. We can move on.
Okay. So Waller comes into Charlotte's office with a map. He was trying to find out if the cave system extended to Forest Road, and it does. In fact, that's where Helge's cabin is. And she asks him to leave.
Waller gets
like,
no
bye.
respect. He's doing all the legwork here, and he's getting no respect or thanks or anything. We'll see at the end of the episode if he makes it to my favorite character, because he deserves something.
By the end of the show, at some point, yeah, we gotta give it to our boy Waller. Charlotte looks at her family photo where all of the Doppler family are sitting in front of the cabin.
Yep.
So then Charlotte calls Peter and asks him why Helge kept the cabin. Charlotte calls Peter and asks him why Helge kept the cabin despite all that happened.
Right. Yeah.
In quotes. Yeah.
We know what happened to Helge when he was a little kid, I guess, right? So is that what she's referring to?
What do you know?
When he had his face bashed in and he was in that blue room.
He had some kind of,
and that's right there at the cabin, right?
Mm-hmm. The blue room is at the cabin?
Didn't Charlotte find the wallpaper in the cabin?
That was in the bunker,
which is part of the cabin.
It's right? On the grounds of the cabin. Yeah,
that's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking like that bunker used to have that blue wallpaper on it at some point. Maybe when Helge was a little kid. Right. And what was my whole point? I don't know. Everything's crazy.
Well, I wasn't saying. Well, I was just asking you to elaborate on your thoughts.
Right.
I'm not saying you're crazy at all.
That's what I'm thinking happened. Like that. She's like, why did Helge keep the cabin after all that happened? It seems like that's the thing that happened when he was little.
Right, but do we know that Charlotte knows about that or Peter knows about it?
Sure, maybe it's not that at all, because Peter tells her that he had an accident, I guess, which led to his dement, or maybe, I don't know, he had some sort of accident in 1986. I love that, the way she said it. I keep saying it. So maybe whatever happens in 1986 is going to happen in a couple days here. Maybe that's what Charlotte was referring to.
Yeah. He seems to indicate, she asks him, like, When did Peter go to the cabin for the first time? Did Helge live there in 1986? When was his accident? And Peter seems to indicate that he says, I don't know, and tells her, I didn't arrive until 1987.
Right.
And so this seems to indicate to me that before 1987, he may not know a lot about Helge's backstory.
Correct.
But he does know that there was an accident on November 12th of 1986.
November 12th. There you go. So, like, today is the 9th. It's Sunday. Then the next day is going to be the 10th. And the day after tomorrow is Tuesday, the 11th. And then the 12th, the day after that. So Helge did skip out on his police appointment. He's got no excuse.
No, it wasn't because of the accident. You were trying to give him an out before?
I was. I really was. I had another thought about what you just said, too. So Peter arrived in 1987. So we don't know where he was prior, obviously. I hope we find out. Maybe he was adopted, or maybe he was just living with his mom somewhere else, and then he comes and lives with Helge. I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know the answers.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know either. But I guess what I was taking from that, when you say all that happened, you were bringing up things that happened when he was a little kid. This makes me think Peter may not know a lot about his backstory. It's almost like, well, until I showed up, Dad didn't exist, or, I guess adopted father or whatever.
But Charlotte's casual mention of all that happened means that he does know something.
Yeah. Well, my thought is with all that happened, it might be related to this accident.
Okay, yeah, that makes
which is
total
obviously
sense.
Wouldn't be the same as the accident when he was a little boy. There's a different accident, so maybe there's something traumatic that happens on November 12th.
That didn't occur to me until we were recording, so that just happened in real time. So at first I was thinking that all that happened was when he was a little boy. Yes, in real time we figured it out, or at least you helped explain it to me, so thank you.
Yeah. And Peter asked her to come home for the sake of the kids, and then also says, I'm worried about you. And Charlotte just hangs up the phone.
Just like hanging up on Waller. Same with Peter. She's shutting everybody out. She's focused. I'm working here, y'all. Leave me alone. I mean, she's like a character that like I'll want to like a lot more, but I mean, she's so busy and so focused. It's hard to like to get an affection for her. You just kind of admire her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
you want to like her.
What's that?
I said I think you want to like Charlotte in general.
There's no reason not to. I don't see any reason not to. But at the same time, she's not like a big warm embrace, you know? Peter, though, like Peter obviously knows something about all this, too, because he's been acting shady this whole time. I'm almost this is a good time to speculate as any, because this is a podcast. So
sure.
I'm almost thinking that Helge is like the quote-unquote bad guy here. Like he's dragging all the kids around, although it seems like he's doing it reluctantly because he seems upset about it. But, I'm sure John Wayne Gacy probably cried sometimes too. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. So Helge is like our guy that we're eyeballing here. But then we know Peter and Trant are up to something. So it's like I was thinking this episode, perhaps like Peter knows something that he's not telling Charlotte, but he knows a piece of information that he's trying to handle himself. Like he knows that Helge is doing some crazy stuff. So him and Trant are down there keeping track, and they're trying to be renegades and trying to like, I don't know, do something that they're not telling the police about, but not nefarious. It's not like they're kidnapping and killing boys and putting them in the chair. Maybe they're trying to prevent that somehow. That's what I'm guessing based on this new Helge information.
Yeah, we know that Helge is involved, at least in some extent, to the actual disappearance and death of these boys.
He's an accomplice for sure.
Yeah, Yeah.
Whether a reluctant one or not, he's an accomplice.
But yes, you did bring up the fact that, which I didn't say, which is when we do see him in this raincoat, he's dragging the body of Yasin.
Right.
And he seems very upset.
Yeah.
About what he's doing.
Yes, he does. Not loving it. I don't love it either. So we're of the same mind there, Helge.
Yeah. Did you want another break before we conclude?
Yes. One more break, and we will come back with the conclusion of our episode. One more word from our sponsors. Not really. All right, back with Sweet Child of Time, episode 7. We're talking about Crossroads. Where did we leave off, Lindsay? Where are we at right now?
Ulrich leaves his mother's house and he drives near the forest and he finds this yellow token on the floor.
Oh, right.
And remembers what Mikkel said on the day he went missing. The question isn't how, but when.
Right. That makes sense to him now, talking to Helge about the past and the future.
Yeah. So he has a light bulb moment. We now have our montage of images. Charlotte walks down to the bunker. Jonas goes back through the Sigmundus door in the cave. Mikkel cuddles the emerald tablet art in his hospital room.
Yep.
Egon sits in the station. Teenage Ulrich is in the cell, and old Helge gets up from his bed. Charlotte finds a piece of the blue wallpaper in the bunker under the bed. And lastly, Jonas walks out of the cave back in 2019. I think this seemed to indicate, which you already said, Steve, but just to make sure, that bunker used to be the blue wallpaper room.
Yes. Perfect cover.
Yeah. Which kind of answers that question. You said in an earlier episode you were thinking maybe Charlotte was about ready to find something, thinking maybe it was the room, but that is the room. It's just that it's been stripped of the decorative stuff.
I wrote like a bunch of exclamation points right there because I was very happy that Charlotte went back to the bunker and continued looking. Just like I want her to go back to that cave and spelunk down. I want her to open that door. And I want her to see what's on the other side. That's what I want her to do next. But she did good here. She did good.
Yeah, you keep wanting somebody to find the blue wallpaper room so that the kids will stop being tortured.
Oh, the wind tunnel.
The wind tunnel.
We see all the wind come around when Jonas goes through. We're glad he went through the right door because wasn't there like a fork in the road? He obviously found his way back. I guess he followed the red string, right?
He found his way back with the red string, yeah.
Good boy. Okay.
So Jonas is next to Hannah's bed, and she wants to know...
What a way to wake up.
You wake up and your son's just sitting there, yeah.
Blankly staring at you menacingly. Do you believe in fate? That's our first question.
She asks where he's been, and Jonas is just basically like, yeah. And Hannah says she doesn't know. Maybe it's her fate to be left by men.
That's sad, yeah.
Yeah. Jonas says, I think Papa loved you very much.
Yes.
And this makes Hannah cry, and Jonas gives her this hug, and you would think she'd never received a hug in her life because she doesn't seem to know how to react to this.
He's no Magnus, you know? I mean, you got to take what you can get, though, Hannah. You know, I mean, your son wants to hug you. You should hug him back. I don't know why she's resistant here. It seems like she was really trying to reach out to Jonas for a couple episodes there. But then she just kind of backed away, I suppose. But, yeah, this is like a big thing for her to, you know, find comfort in someone who loves her for who she is.
I'm getting the sense that maybe physical affection isn't something that's a regular part of this family's life. And so to have him hug her must be, it seemed like it's an odd thing, like it's not something they go into naturally.
Oh, right.
So it makes me think maybe they don't hug very often. You know, dad was emotionally unavailable, probably mom is too.
She was hugging Ulrich a lot. She and Ulrich did a lot of hugging.
When it comes, like, so there are people that it's only, they're only able to accept affection when it comes with sex, you know.
Right.
So that's my interpretation of that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Before we go on, we're talking about Michael, who used to be Mikkel, and you were saying he was hugging that emerald tablet picture in his room. So that spoke to him. You don't go around taking pictures off walls. So obviously that emerald tablet spoke to him, even though he had no idea what it was. He's an 11-year-old boy that just came from 2019. So it's not like he's been time traveling and he has some knowledge that we don't. He's a little kid. But for some reason he stole that picture and he loved it. He was drawn to it for some reason. It reminded me of the Wheel of Time. And there's a character named Matt, and he has lived many lives. And he's, you know, you're supposed to, like, when in reincarnation in this world, you forget all your old lives, you wake up new. For some reason, like, Matt, all his old past lives and all of his future lives and everything, he was, like, getting, like, little glimpses of them early on in the books. And he shouldn't have been, you know. Other people started getting these glimpses later on when they realized, you know, why. But he was getting them from the get-go. And this is what Mikkel made me think about Matt from Wheel of Time for that reason, because we know now that this emerald tablet is important. You know, we're seeing it back in, 1953, tattooed on somebody's back later. Spoiler alert. And so obviously that tablet, that image is something. Mikkel knows nothing about it, but he's drawn to it.
Well, I wondered if he saw it in the caves, like if he saw the image in the caves.
He must have gone through the door, right?
Yeah, like maybe
I didn't
he
even
went
think
through
about
those
that.
doors.
Yeah, maybe he somehow stumbled on that door. He got lost in he didn't have a light like Jonas did. Jonas had a light, so he could see he could see where he was going and stuff. Mikkel was just, I guess, fumbling. That's a great
we don't
call.
really know. We haven't been shown yet how Mikkel came to this time. So I think it's still to be determined, but it made me wonder. I wonder why he was so drawn to this image. Maybe it could be that because he associates this image with the way to get home.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, for us, the viewer, that's an obvious parallel. For him, though, it's remarkable. Yeah.
So Ulrich arrives back in Helge's room.
Oh.
He's gone back. He's gone back to the scene of the crime, Steve.
He's driven.
And it's nighttime, and somehow he snuck in without being detected. The security is tight and winded. Helge is not in his room, but on Helge's nightstand, he finds one of those figurines that is made of nuts, a copy of A Journey Through Time, and a 1 Pfennig coin on a red cord, like the one found on the dead body.
All the clues. Helge's got all the clues right there.
So it's like the game of Clue. You know, he has all the cards, the correct cards that we need. Ulrich notices the window is open and sees Helge running off into the night. And Ulrich follows from a distance and realizes Helge is going to the caves. He calls Charlotte and gets her voicemail and leaves a frantic message that he was right, but Helge did the crime in 1986.
Yes. So it's like Mikkel has taught Ulrich how to do that, how to play the game of it's not where but when. So I think that's kind of cool that, like, you know, Mikkel kind of led him to that line of thinking in a small way.
Time crime. Time bandits.
That's right.
It's a new kind of criminal investigation is needed.
Oh, thought crimes, like that Tom Cruise movie, whatever movie that was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Minority Report.
There you go.
So inside the cave, Helge walks to a box and finds a lantern. The screen then cuts to middle-aged Helge coming out of the hatch. So it's a neat little parallel here.
Right.
He looks down to see the body of Yasin. Okay, I guess that didn't happen till this scene.
That's
I already
fine.
said this before, but
okay.
We know that because of his clothes, because this was Yasin's outfit.
Right.
And around Yasin's neck is a 1 pfennig coin on a red cord. And Helge looks very torn up about this whole thing, but he drags the body away. And then we see a man with the emerald tablet back tattoo using a scrub brush to mop the floor down in the bunker.
Yep.
And it's our hot priest, Noah,
It
shirtless.
is Noah. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. I wasn't positive, but it looked like him. Without his hat, I couldn't tell.
And without the priestly garb, yeah.
That's an awesome tattoo. I love this tattoo. I mean, he's a dedicated man here. I love the tattoo. And okay, so we know it's Yasin, like you said, because of his clothes. You got to mention his eyes were burnt out too, like our classic
Yes.
burnt out eyes. So on the wall of the bunker, I finally figured it out. What it says up there, like in those letters where we were trying to figure out what it said, and I thought it said Dresden. What it actually says is 6, and then it says in German persons. So it's a 6-person bunker is what it is. Because the letters up there are Persouen, which is German for people or persons. So that's
okay.
what the writing on the wall is. But then we see our man write some dates on the wall. And it's not May 11th and it's not September 11th that he writes, because we're American. So we look at those dates and we read them backwards. But it's really what? November 9th and
November 5th and November 9th.
There you go. 1953. That's a long time ago. That's not 1986. That's 33 years before 1986, if I do my math correctly.
Yeah.
That's interesting. 33 again? You think there's a coincidence?
So yeah, wrap up here. I just, about the episode in general, I think that we had this hope that Jonas could grab Mikkel and take him back to the caves and everything would be okay. We even talked about that last episode.
Yeah.
But like the revelation that Mikkel is Michael really does make things kind of messed up. And, we feel sad for Mikkel, and Jonas chooses to leave him there, and that must be a sad life. And then we have these contrasting images of Helge as criminal and savior. So on the one hand, old Helge really seem to want to right the wrongs of the past.
Right.
But all Ulrich sees is man he was responsible for his son's, just like Egon was stuck on Ulrich being the criminal and looking in the wrong place. And there's this theme of repeating the sins and mistakes of the past.
Obviously, yeah. Like with Helge, though, he's old now. He wants to right things wrong, but, that immediately makes me think about anybody who gets older and they think about their past and I'm wiser now. I know now what I've done wrong. But Helge has the ability to, not the ability, but he knows that time travel is a thing. So his old self thinks he can go back and right the wrong, but it doesn't mean that the middle-aged Helge is an honorable person, because it seems like he's in line number 1 to be my baddest guy this episode, because he's I I don't know, unredeemable it seems. I mean, he seems like he's sad about it. Even like 1986 Helge seems like he's not liking what he's doing, and he wants to stop what he's doing, but he can't. You know, we talk about how I've seen this show before, but I don't remember where this goes. I don't remember how this lands at all. So I'm guessing along with everyone else right now, but it looks like Helge is the guy, and he does his thing, and then he gets upset about it.
Well, what about Noah?
I don't know yet. That's right. Noah sent me. Okay. So, yeah, Noah's like preparing this bunker in 1953 for Helge to do his thing. So maybe, Helge is like his henchman, like his Flavor Flav, like his sidekick. It's like, go out there and do the thing, and then bring him to me, and then I'll take care of it from there. Yeah, maybe. Because Noah's absolutely in there, in that bunker.
Yeah.
1953 is kind of early for a bunker, though, right? No, they had bunkers in World War II.
Isn't that Cold War?
Yeah.
The Cold War season was the time of the bunker, right?
I guess. I mean, I'm thinking more of like nuclear, because the nuclear plant came about in 1960. So, like, this bunker predates it by 7 years, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought was weird. The fact that the bunker's there before the nuclear plant.
Plus, I guess we should throw in as a fun thing about Noah. Remember, Noah is like the most famous Noah of all is Noah's Ark.
Right.
So is the bunker an ark, of some kind, or like we're trying to make the bunker? Yeah, only 6 dudes.
Yeah, there's no women, so I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Noah. I'm not seeing the Noah parallel at this point. I think I need to learn about this Noah fellow a little bit more. All I know right now is he's super handsome. He's got a cool tattoo, and he's a hard worker.
He is super handsome. Unfortunately, we're just like we're kind of like, ooh, you're cleaning up the goo from dead bodies, but at the same time we're like, but you're so hot. Okay. 2 other characters I want to just I know we're going to go into least favorite and most favorite, but I think with Hannah, what I found was impressive about Hannah this episode, and she's only on the screen for a couple minutes, but
right.
I couldn't help but feel some level of sympathy for her in this episode, even though we've seen she's kind of a major creep. But she has these abandonment issues, and now her son is also abandoning her by going off on all of these trips and escapades. He shows up every once in a while, but Hannah's basically alone right now, going through. We know she hasn't dealt probably with the death of her husband. She went right into a rebound or an affair, and so she's probably holding some sadness in her that she's not dealing with, and we get to see, I feel like, a slice of that in her one scene here.
Yeah, maybe it's like the first step towards her accepting that and facing it and overcoming it. Maybe this is an important step.
Mm-hmm. And then Charlotte has a sense of duty, but her duty seems to be more to her family than her duty to her job. So my thought here is she tries to thwart Ulrich's suspicions, but even she must be wondering if Helge is guilty. If not, why is she not sharing her suspicions with anyone? She doesn't tell Ulrich about the search warrant or the room in the cave she found. She explores the cabin on her own. She doesn't share any news with Waller. I feel like the conclusion I draw from all of this is that she wants to know herself what's going on before admitting anything. So that's what I mean by that. I feel like the reason she's concealing information is because she wants to protect her family, including Helge, and by de facto, when you talk about Helge, you're also talking about Peter, because Peter is his son. So her duty seem to be to the cause of, getting to the truth. because she's not sharing that with anyone. She's kind of holding all of her cards very close to her chest.
Right. So it's almost like, yeah, when she finds out the truth, whatever the truth is, will she share it with the police or will she keep it in the family?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point. And she was hiding stuff from Waller when it came to Peter back in episode 3, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same deal. She has a lot from Waller. I don't know. She could step him up and he could be a good partner, I think, because he seems like a really tenacious dude that does what you ask him and sometimes might go above and beyond what you ask him. Yeah, I see what you're saying with Charlotte. At first, when you first said that, my immediately thought was, no, she's always at work. She's not at home. Peter's worried about her. Her kids miss her. But yeah, you're right. She's like being like the protector in like in a real distant kind of way, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you have any notes here for the end?
Yeah, I wrote here, is the bunker the blue room? And it seems like we've both agreed. So like I wasn't crazy about that. And so it's not currently, when I say currently, I mean 2019. It's not currently the blue room because Charlotte's going in there and she finds a scrap of paper. So Eric was not taken into this bunker. Eric was time traveled back to 1986 to when the bunker was blue with the blue wallpaper. And so Helge, when he was a little kid, he might have been time traveled to 1986 somehow. I still can't wrap my head around that because I'm seeing old Helge in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the bunker room is neat, and I'm thinking about Eric. Eric had to have time traveled as well. That's kind of confirmed. But they haven't found his body yet. We saw his body. We saw Helge dragging Eric's redhead body around, but I don't think the police have found it yet.
It hasn't been discovered. Yeah.
Old Helge took the wrong entrance to the cave. Like, he's supposed to be going to the bunker. That's like his spot. But instead, he's going to the same part of the cave that everybody else is going to, where the chair is. And it seems like by muscle memory, he knows where a lantern is. So like at first I was like, why is he going to that part of the cave? That's not like his place. But I guess it is. I mean, I guess we're going to learn more later. But I thought it was interesting that he went to that spot where the yellow chair was. And then he found a lantern. And then he's kind of following Jonas's footsteps. Like they could have bumped into each other here. Like that happened really close together.
This is true. That it's, what was he intending to do with this trip?
Yeah.
And I honestly can't remember what happens next if it gets interrupted. But he didn't go to the bunker. He goes to a different room. So what was he going to do here?
I don't know. Maybe go look for some time traveling bodies. I don't know. I mean, I'm just guessing, but I thought it was remarkable that he knows like different areas of the cave and stuff. My last note here is our guy, Noah. It seems like he just randomly wrote those dates on the wall. He was scrubbing and then he was like, oh yeah, as an afterthought, I better write down these dates. So he wrote down for us November 5th and November 9th. For 1953. So we know it's November 9th in 1986 right about now. And we didn't mention that when Jonas went through, not only was the wind blowing, but the lights flickered everywhere across town. So that makes me think that anytime somebody goes through there, the lights are going to flicker. So maybe anytime we've seen the lights flicker, somebody's going through. Seems obvious. The stranger did it last episode. Jonas did it this episode. The night that Mikkel disappeared, the lights flickered. Mikkel time traveled that night. Maybe somebody else did too. But it seems like it was obvious that it was happening at the same time. As soon as Jonas went through, lights flickered. And the reason I brought the dates up for Noah writing the dates on the wall is Trant and Peter, continue that process of keeping track of dates with their cool little emerald tablet book, which I'd like to get one of those, little notebook with that symbol on the front of it. So yeah, they're keeping track of these dates. So I guess these dates are important, and they're all going to come into play later.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, it makes me wonder what the dates are. Are these like days killed somebody? Are they days we will take them? Why are these dates important?
Right. I'm thinking that they're time traveling dates based on Peter and Trant, because they wrote down the time when the lights started flickering. And
when something was going to happen, they had those dates. So something happens on these dates somehow. Yeah.
In November. I think that's my last questioning note of this episode, I believe. Yeah, that's all I got for this one. How about you, Lindsay? Did you have more notes for us?
Are we not doing our favorite characters?
Oh, geez, look at that. Yes, we're absolutely doing our favorite and least favorite characters. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay. So we're doing our favorite characters right now.
Yes.
I am going to give my character of the episode to Jonas. I haven't given Jonas an award yet, and I really liked him in this episode. I feel like he had a lot of things thrown at him. And he handled them all with grace, and had to resist his natural impulse to go approach Mikkel. So I don't know. I feel really bad for him that he's getting all these things thrown at him. Guess what? Mikkel is your father, and the woman that you love is your aunt. And and then he comes back and thinks, when he could just be fixated on poor me, he goes to talk to his mom.
Yep.
Because obviously it touched him a little bit to go back and see her as a young child. And so he's trying to connect with her. And so I thought he'd had a really strong episode this time.
I wanted to give my favorite guy to Waller, just because he doesn't get a lot of play. But I got to admit, Jonas is the guy this episode. I mean, we're really focused on Helge, but everything you said about Jonas, I'm just going to piggyback and just cheat, cut and paste what you said, because, Jonas did it all for us this episode. He's been my favorite character before, and he's going to be it again now. So, Jonas, you're number one. With your yellow raincoat. You're the star of dark. For my least favorite, I also picked the star of this episode. I picked Helge as my least favorite. See, I'm almost thinking of like giving like favorite characters, and not necessarily my favorite guy, but just somebody that I like. That's why I wanted to give it to Waller. That's why I gave it to the, what did you say her name was, who works in the autopsy lab? Cat.
It's like Edie or something.
Adorable name for an adorable woman. Like, I wanted to give it to her one week, so I did. And for Helge, it just seems like it's just a gimme. I mean, we're learning about Helge here and what he's done in 1986, and it's not good. So I think he deserves it this time. So I'm giving my worst to Helge. What do you think about the least favorite or your despicable person this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I don't know how to feel about Helge, because on the one hand, I do think he's acting really sus, but I can't help but feel for him at the same time. The way that he's so beat up and about doing these actions, it makes me feel like he doesn't really want to participate in it, but he's sort of being manipulated by a stronger person, that person perhaps being Noah.
Right.
I feel like he's more of the henchman, like you said, and this is sort of against your will. He's mixed up with somebody who has a stronger will than him, so he's sort of doing their bidding. But that being said, I gave my worst to Egon, and I've probably given him my worst again, but he just annoys me. He just annoys me how he just keeps fixating on Ulrich, and how he hates teenagers, and he especially hates teenagers that don't like death metal, and also just the way that he questions Jonas really triggered me. I didn't like it.
Wow.
So I think, I don't know, did we see him much more than that? I don't know. I just think I want him to be better. So, yeah.
That is so funny. He was almost he was like my number 3 for like my favorite, because this was my Egon redemption episode. This, because I never liked Egon either. I made it very clear I don't like the guy. And this episode, he started actually doing things that I was like, okay, he's maybe not such an asshole. Yes, he's fixated on Ulrich, but I can honestly see why. And I didn't think the thing with Jonas was too bad. That's just funny to me that you gave him the worst, and I was almost going to give him the best just for a redemption arc. That's interesting.
Well, remember that one episode where I ended up giving Peter the worst, but it was almost like, again, I feel like this is such a great episode that it is really hard to find a character to say you dislike in this episode. So I don't think you should see it as like, I really dislike Egon that much. It's just that he's the person that raised my blood level the most. I could possibly give it to Ulrich, but I gave, he got my ire last week.
Same here.
Oh yeah, it was him. You gave it to Katarina. But Ulrich's also being a lousy detective and focusing and making some really crappy decisions to like go to Helge's room and harass an old man that's hooked up to a machine. Ulrich. Yeah. Maybe I should just give it to Ulrich. I don't know, but it's done. I gave it to Egon. But again, those two are they're doing very similar things in their time periods. So
You're right. Yeah, I almost thought about Ulrich in the bad category too, but again, he wasn't as despicable this episode as he's presented before. I really wish we could have like listener guests on the show every now and then to like clue us into like what they're thinking about these episodes too. Letters could work in that respect. Write us here at the podcast at sweetchildoftimepod@gmail.com, or drop us a line on Reddit or Instagram or wherever. We love hearing from you because we want to hear other perspectives. I love telling Lindsey my theories, then I can look at her face and I can see like if she's holding something back or, it's great. It's a great guessing game. So I want to play it with everybody. Let's see. I don't have anything else I wanted to plug. I keep saying that. That's terrible. I'm going to edit that out. We got me over there on Instagram. I'm intro.void. And you can find Lindsey on Instagram as well. She's one of my stories. That's the number one of my stories. We always want you to go to oneofmystories.com and check out Lindsey's recaps and check out her YouTubes, because she's got lots of YouTubes there. And she's also a film critic, y'all. So she's got lots of reviews, lots of goodies to check out. She's already checked out, Fast X. And she's done... I saw you did something else recently, too, that I was like, oh, she's already on to that one. What movie did you just do recently?
Carmen.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you're ahead of the game. Thank you very much. Lindsey, anything else? I'll fix it in the edit. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Lindsey, I think we're wrapping up the show, so I hope that you have the last word. Do you have anything else?
Steve, I hope you find water shade and a picture of the emerald tablet to cuddle with.
I hope you find water and shade and a back tattoo of the emerald tablet.
Or the man with the back tattoo.
Ooh.
Send him FedEx.
Until next week, sweet child of time. Bye, y'all.
Bye.